Be me. Teresa, 52, devoted mother who raised her son with proper values. Spent years making sure Lucas understood consent, emotional labor, and women's autonomy. Taught him from age 5 that traditional gender roles are oppressive constructs. Never let him play with toy guns or anything that reinforced toxic masculinity. Corrected him every time he used gendered language or made assumptions. So proud when he grew up respectful and aware of his privilege as a white male. Lucas is 28 now, works in tech, seemed like he was doing well. Haven't heard from him much lately, but figured he's just busy with work. Always encouraged his independence. Didn't want to be one of those overbearing mothers. Get a call from his landlord saying his apartment lease expired and he's gone. What the hell? Try calling Lucas, but phone goes straight to voicemail for days. Finally get a text from him. Mom, I'm fine. I moved to Southeast Asia for work. We'll call you later. Southeast Asia? What work? He never mentioned anything about international opportunities. Spend 3 sleepless nights wondering what happened. Did he get fired? Is he running from debt? Did something traumatic happen? He finally calls me on a Sunday morning. Voice sounds different. More relaxed somehow. Immediately start asking questions about why he left so suddenly. It wasn't sudden, Mom. I've been planning this for 2 years. 2 years? And he never told me? Feel this crushing weight in my chest. Raised him to communicate openly, to share his feelings. Why didn't you tell me you were unhappy here? We could have talked through whatever was bothering you. Because I knew you'd try to fix me, and I'm not broken. That stings because I've never tried to fix him, just guide him toward being a better person. I'm your mother, Lucas. I have a right to know what's happening in your life. Actually, you don't. I'm an adult. This cold distance in his voice I've never heard before. Ask him about his job, his living situation. When he's coming back to visit, I'm not coming back, Mom. Not to live. Maybe not even to visit. Feel like someone punched me in the stomach. What do you mean you're not coming back? This is your home. No, it's not. It hasn't felt like home for a long time. Spend the next hour trying to understand what I did wrong. Did I not support him enough? Was I too critical? Keep asking what changed. What made him want to leave everything behind? He keeps deflecting, talking about the weather and local food. Finally lose patience. Lucas, stop treating me like I'm some acquaintance. Tell me what's really going on. Long pause on the other end. You really want to know? Of course I want to know. I'm worried sick about you. I left because I was tired of Western women. Blink hard. Sure, I misheard. What did you say? I moved here because the dating culture back home is toxic, and I wanted to find someone who actually values partnership instead of constantly looking for reasons to be offended. Feel my blood pressure rising. This is not the son I raised. Lucas, that's an incredibly problematic thing to say. You can't just write off an entire group of people based on, see, there it is. I can't even express my feelings without you telling me my perspective is wrong. Your perspective is wrong. You're generalizing about millions of women based on what? A few bad dates? A few bad dates? Mom, I spent 8 years trying to date in that environment. Every woman I met was looking for reasons why I wasn't progressive enough, wasn't emotionally available enough, wasn't sharing enough domestic labor, even though we didn't live together. I felt like I was constantly walking on eggshells. This is exactly the kind of thinking I spent his childhood trying to prevent. Those women were probably just setting healthy boundaries and expecting you to be an equal partner. That's not toxic. That's basic respect. Equal partner. Mom, I had a girlfriend who made me apologize for holding a door open because it reinforced patriarchal power structures. Another one who said I was mansplaining when I tried to help her fix her computer, which she asked me to do. He's clearly been influenced by some very misguided perspectives. Lucas, if multiple women were telling you these things, maybe you should examine your own behavior instead of blaming them. There it is again. It's always my fault. It's always the man's fault. Voice getting sharper, angrier. I never said it was always anyone's fault. I'm saying that relationships require self-reflection. Self-reflection? I spent years in therapy trying to understand why I felt so anxious and inadequate around women. You know what I figured out? Heart sinking because I can see where this is going. What? That I was raised to believe that my natural instincts and feelings as a man were inherently harmful. That I needed to constantly monitor myself to make sure I wasn't being oppressive or threatening. Do you have any idea how exhausting that is? Feel defensive because I taught him to be considerate, not oppressed. I taught you to be thoughtful and respectful. Those are good qualities. You taught me to be ashamed of my masculinity. Every time I showed normal male behavior as a kid, you redirected it. I couldn't be competitive. I couldn't be assertive. I couldn't even show frustration without you explaining how toxic masculinity was harmful to everyone around me. Remember those conversations differently. was helping him become emotionally intelligent, not ashamed. I was teaching you emotional regulation and empathy. You were teaching me that being male was something to apologize for. Long silence. This is not how I remember his childhood at all. He was happy, well-adjusted, had friends. Lucas, you seemed perfectly content growing up. You never expressed any of these feelings before, because every time I tried, you'd lecture me about privilege and perspective. I learned early that my feelings didn't matter as much as making sure I didn't accidentally harm someone else's. That's not what I did. I taught him to consider other people's experiences. I taught you empathy. I taught you to think about how your actions affect others. Those are important skills, at the expense of my own self-worth. Mom, I spent my 20s afraid to approach women because I was so terrified of making them uncomfortable. I overthought every interaction, every text message, every gesture. I turned myself into an anxious mess trying to be the perfect, non-threatening male. Voice cracking now, and I realize he's actually upset. Not just distant, but genuinely hurt. I never wanted you to feel anxious. I wanted you to be confident and respectful. Well, you got the respectful part right. But confidence? I had none. And you know what's ironic? What? The women here don't want me to apologize for existing. They don't analyze every conversation for hidden power dynamics. They don't expect me to grovel for forgiveness when I have an opinion or preference. They actually seem to like that I'm male instead of tolerating it. Feel sick hearing him talk like this. Sounds like he's fetishizing these women based on stereotypes. Lucas, you're talking about these women like they're not full people with their own thoughts and agency. You're reducing them to what they can do for your ego, and you're proving my point. I can't even describe positive experiences with women without you finding fault with my perspective. Realize this conversation is spinning out of control. Take a deep breath. Try to reset. I'm not trying to find fault. I'm worried that you're running away from problems instead of addressing them, and I'm worried that you're making some very unfair generalizations about Western women. Unfair? Mum, these aren't generalizations. These are 8 years of lived experience. 8 years of being told that my masculinity was toxic, that my career success was unearned privilege, that my desire for a traditional partnership meant I wanted a domestic slave. Never taught him any of those things. Taught him that success requires acknowledging advantages, not that he didn't earn it. I never said your career success was unearned. You didn't have to. Every conversation about my achievements came with a reminder about systemic advantages and how important it was to lift up others. I never got to just feel proud of working hard. That's not how those conversations went. Was teaching him to be humble and socially conscious. I was trying to help you understand your place in the world and your responsibility to help others, by making sure I never felt good about myself without guilt attached. Do you know what it's like to achieve something and have your first thought be about who might be disadvantaged by your success instead of just feeling happy? Starting to feel attacked. Spent years being a thoughtful parent, examining my own biases, reading parenting books. Made sure to raise a son who would be a good partner and citizen. I raised you to be conscious of inequality because equality matters. I'm proud of the man you became. The man I became? Mom, I became a neurotic mess who was afraid of his own shadow. I became so worried about accidentally harming someone that I stopped advocating for myself entirely. This is not the reality I remember. He was successful, had relationships, seemed content. You dated plenty of women. You had long-term relationships. You seemed happy. I seemed happy because I learned to perform happiness while suppressing everything authentic about myself. Every relationship was me trying to be who I thought they wanted instead of who I actually was. Long pause. Feeling like I'm talking to a stranger. Who are you actually, Lucas? I'm someone who likes being competent and protective. I like solving problems and taking charge sometimes. I like feeling needed and appreciated. I enjoy traditionally masculine things, and I'm not ashamed of that anymore. And you know what? The women here appreciate those qualities instead of seeing them as character flaws that need correcting. Heart sinking, because this sounds like he's rejecting everything I taught him. Those qualities aren't character flaws, but they become problematic when they override other people's autonomy. See, there you go again. I can't even describe positive traits without you immediately jumping to how they might harm someone. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Feel tears forming because this conversation is going nowhere. I just want you to be happy and healthy, and to treat people with respect. I am happy. For the first time in years, I'm actually happy. I'm dating someone who doesn't see my masculinity as a threat to overcome. She appreciates when I take initiative instead of requiring constant negotiation. She likes that I want to provide and protect instead of viewing those instincts as patriarchal oppression. This sounds like he's found someone who enables his worst impulses. Lucas, healthy relationships require communication and negotiation. If she's not advocating for her own needs, how do you know she's not advocating for her needs? Why is your assumption that she must be oppressed instead of that she might actually be happy with our dynamic? Because these traditional relationship patterns often hide inequality. Because traditionally, feminine relationship roles often come with real costs that women bear silently. And there it is. You can't accept that a woman might genuinely prefer a more traditional dynamic. You've decided that any woman who doesn't conform to your model of empowerment must be brainwashed or oppressed. That's not what I think. I think all women deserve choice and agency. I think all women deserve the right to choose their own path without societal pressure. Unless they choose something you disapprove of, then suddenly their choice isn't really a choice, it's internalized oppression that needs to be corrected. Feeling frustrated because he's misrepresenting my views. That's not what I said. It's what you implied. Just like you spent my entire childhood implying that my natural male instincts were problems to solve, rather than qualities to develop positively. Took such care to balance things. Encouraged his interests while teaching awareness. I encouraged your interests. I just made sure you understood the impact of your behavior on others, at the cost of ever feeling confident in my own instincts. Mom, I second-guessed everything for decades. Every decision, every preference, every natural reaction had to be filtered through, whether it might reinforce harmful patterns. Do you have any idea how paralyzing that becomes? Never intended for him to feel paralyzed, wanted him to be thoughtful. I wanted you to be a critical thinker. I became a critical thinker about everyone except the people who taught me to think that way. It took moving halfway across the world to realize that maybe, just maybe, some of my natural instincts were actually healthy and normal. Feeling like everything I thought I knew about my parenting is being questioned. What natural instincts are you talking about? Wanting to lead sometimes, wanting to be relied upon, taking pride in being strong and capable, enjoying the fact that I'm male instead of constantly apologizing for it, wanting a partner who compliments me instead of competing with me. These don't sound inherently problematic, but the way he's framing them worries me. Those things aren't wrong, but they become wrong when they prevent your partner from having equal say or equal opportunity. And why do you assume they would? Why is your default assumption that traditional masculine behavior automatically oppresses women? Because historically, it has. That's the point of feminism. To address those patterns. Because historically, those dynamics have resulted in women having less power and fewer choices. So because some men in the past abused those roles, I'm not allowed to embody positive versions of them? I have to reject my entire gender identity because other people misused similar traits, feeling attacked for having reasonable concerns about gender dynamics. You don't have to reject your gender identity. You just need to be aware of how power dynamics work. I've been aware of power dynamics my entire life. I've been hyper-aware to the point of dysfunction. And you know what I discovered? All that awareness didn't make me a better partner. It made me an anxious, indecisive mess who was afraid to have preferences. This conversation is becoming so painful. Feel like I'm losing my son to some kind of reactionary thinking. Lucas, I'm scared that you're overcorrecting. I'm scared that you're rejecting important principles because dating was difficult. Dating wasn't just difficult, Mum. Dating was humiliating. I felt like I was constantly on trial for crimes I didn't commit. Every interaction was a test I didn't know how to pass. Maybe he did have some bad experiences, but that doesn't invalidate the entire framework. Some people take things too far, but that doesn't mean the underlying principles are wrong, doesn't it? When an ideology consistently produces anxiety, guilt, and dysfunction in the people trying to follow it, maybe the problem is with the ideology. Feminism doesn't produce those things when understood correctly. Feminism doesn't produce anxiety and guilt. Misunderstanding feminism might. So now it's my fault for not understanding correctly? 8 years of therapy, dozens of books, constant self-examination, and I still didn't get it right? Feel defensive because he's attacking something that matters deeply to me. I'm not saying it's your fault. I'm saying that maybe your interpretation was influenced by anxiety, rather than the actual principles. My interpretation was influenced by you, Mum. By 18 years of being taught that masculine behavior was inherently suspect and needed constant monitoring. That's not what I taught him. Taught him to be conscious and respectful. I taught you to be thoughtful about your impact on others. You taught me to distrust myself. And you know what's really sad? I internalized it so completely that it took years of living abroad to realize that most of my instincts were actually fine. Feel like crying because this is not how I remember raising him. I remember a happy child who was kind to everyone. I was kind because I was afraid of the consequences of not being kind. I was helpful because I was afraid of being seen as selfish. I was deferential because I was afraid of being seen as domineering. Everything I did came from fear of your disapproval. That can't be true. We had such a close relationship when he was growing up. We talked about everything. You came to me with problems. I came to you with problems that fit your worldview. I learned early which feelings were acceptable to share and which ones would result in lectures about privilege and perspective, starting to feel defensive and hurt. Put so much thought and care into raising him. I was trying to raise a son who would be a good partner and contribute positively to the world. At the cost of raising a son who felt good about himself. Do you realize I've never felt proud of being a man? Not once in my entire life until I moved here? That hits hard because pride in gender identity seems problematic. Pride in gender identity can become toxic when it's based on superiority over others. And there you go again. I can't even express feeling good about my masculinity without you immediately explaining why it's dangerous. This is exactly the pattern I'm talking about. Feel trapped because I genuinely believe these principles matter. I'm not saying your masculinity is dangerous. I'm saying uncritical pride in any identity category can become problematic. Uncritical? Mom, I've been nothing but critical of my own identity my entire life. When do I get to just feel good about who I am without analyzing the potential negative impacts? Long silence because I don't know how to answer that. Want him to feel good about himself, but also want him to be aware of larger social dynamics. I want you to feel good about yourself within a framework that considers other people's well-being. That framework has made it impossible for me to feel good about myself at all. Every positive feeling gets immediately qualified with guilt and self-doubt. This is so painful to hear. Never wanted him to feel guilty for existing. I never wanted you to feel guilty for existing. But you wanted me to feel guilty for existing as a male in a world where males have advantages. Every conversation about success, relationships, or personal satisfaction came with reminders about privilege and responsibility to others. Those reminders were important for developing empathy and social consciousness. Those reminders were meant to develop empathy, not guilt. The impact was guilt. Constant, pervasive guilt about taking up space, having opinions, pursuing goals, or feeling satisfied with achievements. And you know what finally broke me out of that pattern? What? Meeting women who were actually happy when I succeeded instead of immediately concerned about who might be disadvantaged by my success. Women who celebrated my achievements instead of contextualizing them within systemic inequality. Feel like he's describing women who don't understand or care about social justice. Lucas, caring about systemic inequality doesn't mean you can't celebrate individual achievements. In theory, sure. In practice, every celebration in our house came with a sociology lesson. I couldn't just feel proud of making the varsity team without a discussion about how athletics funding disadvantages girls' sports. Those discussions were important for understanding context. Understanding context is important for developing a complete worldview. Understanding context prevented me from ever feeling unqualified happiness about anything. Every positive experience became a teaching moment about someone else's struggles. Feeling overwhelmed because this is not how I intended any of those conversations. I was trying to help you understand your place in the world. You helped me understand that my place in the world was to feel guilty about my advantages and minimize my own needs in service of correcting historical injustices. That's such a distorted interpretation of everything I tried to teach him. That's not what I was trying to teach you. But it's what I learned. And apparently I wasn't the only one, because I've met a lot of other men here who left for similar reasons. Hearts sinking, because this sounds like he's found some kind of community built around rejecting progress. You've met other men who moved abroad to escape Western women? I've met other men who got tired of being treated like potential predators in their own dating culture. Men who wanted to find partners who actually liked them instead of just tolerating them. This sounds like such a victim narrative. Western women aren't treating men like predators for expecting basic respect. Western women aren't treating men like predators. They're just setting boundaries and expecting equality. Some are setting reasonable boundaries. Others are using social justice language to justify treating men badly and calling it empowerment. This is exactly the kind of thinking that undermines women's legitimate concerns. Lucas, women have spent centuries having their boundaries ignored and their concerns dismissed. If some women are being extra cautious, it's because they've learned they have to be. And I understand that intellectually. But emotionally, I got tired of paying for other men's crimes. I got tired of being treated with suspicion until I proved I was one of the good ones. Feel like he's completely missing the point about why women might be cautious. Women's caution isn't personal. It's protective behavior based on real experiences. I understand that it's not personal, but it still felt personal when I was experiencing it day after day in my actual life. Understanding the sociological reasons for something doesn't make it feel better when you're on the receiving end. This is such a self-centered way to think about women's safety concerns. So women should just ignore their safety concerns to make men feel better. No, Mom. Women should do whatever they need to do to feel safe. And men should be allowed to pursue relationships where they don't have to constantly prove they're not dangerous. This sounds like he wants relationships without accountability. Accountability isn't the same as being treated like you're dangerous. In my experience, they became the same thing. Every relationship felt like I was on probation for crimes I might commit rather than being appreciated for who I actually was. Maybe he was dating women who had been hurt and were being extra careful. Maybe the women you dated had bad experiences that made them cautious. Maybe they did. And maybe I deserved to date women who hadn't decided that all men were guilty until proven innocent. Feel like he's being incredibly insensitive to women's legitimate concerns. That's such a selfish way to think about other people's trauma responses. And there it is again. My feelings and experiences are selfish if they conflict with someone else's. This is exactly what I'm talking about. His feelings matter, but so do women's safety concerns. Your feelings matter, but so do women's safety concerns. I never said women's safety concerns don't matter. I said I got tired of being treated like a threat by people who didn't know me. This is going in circles, and I'm feeling more upset by the minute. My son has apparently been harboring all these resentments for years. I had no idea you felt this way, because I knew you'd react exactly like this. I knew you'd find ways to explain why my feelings were wrong, or selfish, or short-sighted. I'm not saying his feelings are wrong, trying to help him understand a broader context. I'm not saying your feelings are wrong. I'm trying to help you understand why things might be the way they are. I understand why things are the way they are. I just decided I didn't want to live with the consequences anymore. Consequences of what? Basic respect for women? Consequences of what, exactly? Consequences of a dating culture where men are guilty until proven innocent, where masculine behavior is automatically suspect, where wanting traditional things makes you a misogynist, and where women's emotional needs always take priority over men's. This is such a distorted view of what equality looks like, Lucas. Equality doesn't mean women's needs take priority. It means both people's needs matter equally. In theory. In practice, every relationship I had involved me constantly adjusting my behavior to accommodate her comfort while she never had to consider mine. Maybe he was in some unbalanced relationships, but that's not representative of all women. It sounds like you had some unbalanced relationships. That doesn't mean all Western women are unreasonable. I didn't say all Western women are unreasonable. I said the cultural expectations around dating had become unreasonable, and I wanted to find somewhere with different expectations. Feel like this whole conversation has been him attacking everything I believe in. It sounds like you're rejecting the idea that men need to be conscious of their impact on women. I'm rejecting the idea that being conscious of my impact means I'm not allowed to have needs or preferences or boundaries of my own. Of course, he's allowed to have boundaries. Everyone deserves boundaries. Of course you're allowed to have boundaries. Really? Because every time I expressed a preference or boundary, it got analyzed for hidden sexism. I couldn't even say I preferred women who were more traditionally feminine without being accused of wanting to oppress someone. Preferring traditionally feminine women can be problematic if it's based on wanting compliance. Preferring traditionally feminine women can be problematic if the attraction is based on wanting someone compliant rather than appreciating actual qualities. See? I can't even have aesthetic preferences without you psychoanalyzing them for hidden motives. This is exactly what I mean. Feel frustrated because these distinctions matter. These distinctions do matter, Lucas. To you. They matter to you. They don't matter to me anymore. And they don't matter to the woman I'm dating now, and we're both happier for it. Feel scared that he's in a relationship that's reinforcing these problematic attitudes. What's your relationship like with this woman? It's peaceful. We both have roles we're good at and enjoy. She likes that I take charge of certain things, and I like that she takes charge of other things. Neither of us spends time analyzing whether our dynamic reinforces harmful gender patterns. This sounds like they're just falling into traditional patterns without examining them. Don't you think it's worth examining whether your patterns are healthy? We did examine them. We decided they work for us and make us both happy. That was the end of the examination. But happiness isn't the only measure of whether a relationship dynamic is good. Happiness isn't the only measure of whether a relationship is healthy. What else should we measure it by? Your approval? That hurts because I'm his mother, and my concerns should matter to him. I'm your mother. My concerns about your well-being should matter to you. Your concerns about my well-being always came with concerns about whether I was reinforcing harmful social patterns. I got tired of my personal happiness being secondary to your political goals. My political goals? These aren't political goals. They're basic human rights. These aren't political goals, Lucas. These are basic principles about treating people fairly. And I do treat people fairly. I just do it without constantly second-guessing whether my fairness meets your specific definition. Feeling so hurt and frustrated, this conversation has gone completely off the rails. I feel like you're rejecting everything I tried to teach you about being a good person. I'm rejecting the parts that made me miserable and keeping the parts that actually helped me be good to people. But how can he know which parts are which without maintaining awareness of social dynamics? How can you tell which parts to keep without maintaining awareness of social dynamics? By paying attention to results instead of theory. If something makes me and the people around me happier and healthier, I keep it. If it makes us anxious and guilty, I discard it. This is such an oversimplified way to think about complex social issues. Social justice isn't just about personal happiness. It's about creating fair systems for everyone. And I'll worry about creating fair systems when I'm in a position to create systems. Right now, I'm just trying to create a fair relationship with one person, and we're managing that just fine without a theoretical framework. Feel like crying because this feels like such a fundamental rejection of my values. I feel like I don't know who you are anymore. You're finally meeting who I actually am, instead of who you wanted me to be. That's not fair because I loved him exactly as he was. I loved you exactly as you were. You loved the version of me that successfully performed the values you wanted me to have. This is the first time you're meeting the version of me that stopped performing. Long silence. Don't know what to say to that because maybe there's some truth to it. Maybe I did focus too much on values and not enough on just accepting him. I don't know how to fix this. You can't fix it, Mom. And that's okay. I'm not broken. I'm just different from what you expected. Feel so lost because this feels like losing my son. It feels like I'm losing you. You're not losing me. You're just losing the version of me that needed your approval to feel okay about himself. But I want him to care about my approval. I'm his mother. I want my approval to matter to you. It does matter to me. But it doesn't control me anymore. Those are different things. I don't know how to process any of this. Feel like everything I thought I knew about parenting and values is being questioned. I need time to think about all of this. That's fair. But Mom, while you're thinking, try to consider that maybe I actually am happier now. Maybe the changes I've made are actually good for me, even if they don't align with your worldview. Hang up the phone, feeling completely shattered. Spend the rest of the day crying and questioning everything. Call my sister Rebecca to talk through what happened. She listens to the whole story without judgment. What do you think I should do? I think maybe Lucas has a point about some things. Feel betrayed because Rebecca is supposed to be supportive. What do you mean? I mean, maybe you did focus a lot on making sure he had the right political opinions instead of just supporting him as a person. That's not what I did. I raised him with important values. You did. But maybe you also made him feel like he had to earn your love by holding those values correctly. Rebecca doesn't understand because she doesn't have kids. She doesn't understand the responsibility of raising a son in this world. You don't understand the responsibility of raising a son who won't harm women. And you don't understand what it might have felt like to be that son. Feel so alone because even my own sister is taking his side. Spend weeks replaying the conversation, wondering if there's truth to what he said, wondering if I somehow failed him. He calls again a month later. Voice still has that calm, distant quality. How are you doing, Mom? I've been better. I've been thinking about what you said. And? I still think many of your criticisms are unfair. But I'm willing to acknowledge that I might have been too focused on political outcomes and not focused enough on your emotional well-being. That means a lot to me. But I also need you to acknowledge that the values I taught you matter, even if my methods were imperfect. I do acknowledge that, Mom. I just think there are multiple ways to embody those values, and the way you taught me wasn't working for me personally. You feel slightly better that he's not rejecting everything. Can you tell me about your life there? About the woman you're dating? He talks for an hour about his job, his apartment, his girlfriend Maria. She sounds lovely and accomplished and kind. Also sounds like she has very traditional ideas about relationships. By the end of the call, still feels sad and confused, but also relieved that he sounds genuinely happy. Maybe Rebecca was right that my methods were flawed, even if my intentions were good. Maybe love means accepting that your child might choose a different path than you'd prefer. Still believe deeply in feminist principles. But maybe believing in those principles doesn't require my son to embody them exactly the way I would. Feel like I lost an argument I didn't know I was having. But maybe winning the argument was less important than maintaining the relationship. Still don't understand his choices. Still worried he's making mistakes, but he's an adult, and maybe trusting him is more important than being right. Still thinking about everything he said. Wondering if other mothers have had similar conversations with their sons. Wondering if this is just what happens when your children grow up and form their own opinions. Feeling older and less certain about everything than I did before this started.